I was going to do some funny intro to this video, but I couldn't think of any. So now you just get me explaining how I wanted to. Instead, we're just going to start. We're going with short and sharp recently. These are the videos. These are the jokes. Get used to them. I'll be here, you know, however, whenever I want to and feel like it. This video, I have read sequels so long after the first book. Like, oh my goodness. But I kept track. I looked. I found out how long it was since I'd read the first book, and I'm going to tell you, along with my reviews. Again, I'm doing the same thing I've been doing for a while. I've filmed them in a while. I don't know what order I'm going to give them to you in. You're welcome. But I've read these and reviewed them a long time ago, but we're going to go short and sharp. Let's do it. Oh, come on, let's go. Okay. Here we go. So let's stop being quirky, relatable, and just read it. Glass Sword by Victoria Aveyard. I actually really liked Red Queen. It was 1.5 years after I read the first book that I finally read book 2, and it was a 3-star book. A lot darker than the first. Oh, little to no hope throughout was the theme. Oh, what a shame. Dark emotions, dark choices, refusal to let go, and revenge, and darkness, and the guiding force in pretty much all characters. Oh, that's nice. Ugh. Powers are interesting. Oh, yes, I actually always thought that. And it makes the fighting great. Just wish the characters were a little more likable and a little less of a combined wine and bloodthirsty mess. Oh my. That's a lot of information. And none at all either. If you want to know what any of these books are about, you're going to have to go figure it out for yourself. You're welcome. Next book, True Valor by Dee Henderson. 1.5 years, again, after reading the first, which was True Valor. Wait. No, it was True something else. What was it? True Devotion. Oh, look, I still have time to fix that before this gets released. 2.75 stars. Oh no, Dee Henderson used to be my favorite author. No overarching plot. Oh, that's why. I'm a plot girly. Mostly mini stories of characters who have a very slow burn style romance over mostly letters on multiple deployments. It's a military series. I think I got it all in that sentence, the entire book in that one sentence. While I didn't mind the characters and the mini stories were pretty interesting, I'm a plot person and there wasn't one. The blurb made it seem to be something we could latch onto, but it took most of the book to get there and it was really anticlimactic. While I could appreciate the military stuff for a while without a plot to anchor it, I lost interest fast. There are definitely things in here to like, but it just wasn't my pacing or style enough to enjoy it. Bummer. The Calling by Rochelle Decker. 10 months after reading the first book, which was called The Choosing, which I absolutely adored, one of my favorite books of all time. I would recommend anybody and everybody to read that one book. 3 stars for the second one. Fear is the real enemy to freedom. That's what this book focused on. After the first one, this was disappointing. The danger didn't feel as extreme. I don't like time gaps between books, like extreme ones especially, and I was not as connected to Remco, which is the character's name, as I was with Carrington in the first book. The ending was ... conflicting. Yeah. I know why it was written that way, but I don't quite buy it. I also hate that the next book has a huge time jump, 2 decades. Which is why I've been putting off reading the last book. The lessons were great and deep understanding was good, but for me, it just wasn't enough to raise my rating like the first book did. The first book was an absolute winner. It was a firecracker. This book was just like, is that right? So I will eventually get to the third book, probably. I have it. It's over there somewhere. No, it's over there somewhere. All right, next book, The Mystery of the Silver Coins by Lois Walford Johnson. This is technically like a middle grade fiction. So through 11 months after reading the first one, which was called Raiders from the Sea. Again, I'm not the target audience, and the only reason I was rereading this series is because I read it when I was the target audience, but 2 stars. Boring. I was so bored. The first book, we had some action pushing things forward, but this was just a few different POVs of running through the forest and avoiding people chasing you. I was bored. Not a huge historical fiction person, and this period with Vikings and stuff is not my fave either. I liked these books as a kid. I think I lied. But I can't really remember why. A little sad that I didn't enjoy it, but it was quick and the first book was better. There you go. Local Artist by Paul Trembling. Now, this is a DNF, all right? And for very serious reasons. This was 1 year after reading the first book, Local Poet, which I really liked. 2 stars. I don't know why I gave it 2 stars. DNF halfway through with a skip to the end. Huge capital letters with very serious trigger warnings, all right? Graphic unaliving. And, you know, abusing littlies in the most horrible way, murder, injuries, violence, lots and lots and lots of content warnings. I jumped to the end, curious to know the solution before planning to continue, if I was going to continue, but I'd already slugged through the graphic unaliving description, which was just awful, so I was already on edge. When I read some of the ending, I didn't even finish it. I put it aside, disgusted. There you go. Honestly, good job by the author for making me so uncomfortable and icky feeling that I couldn't even read it, but I was officially done at this point. Just so not for me. These books are short by Paul, but yeah, no, we're not doing that. All right, Pillars of Fire, an Ether novel by, Laurice E. Molinari, apologies for the name, 13 months after I read the first one, which was called Vero Rising, which again, I loved that so much. 3.5 stars. The first book was a regular kid figuring out he was a guardian angel in training, there you go, and what such a different life and calling really looked like, exploring all the amazing spiritual things he had no idea had been around him the whole time. This second one continues his training, even though the teachers he encounters don't actually teach him anything and basically leave him and his fellow trainees flapping in the wind. And yes, I meant that on purpose because they're angels with wings. But it didn't have the same feel. Anyway, there was still a fascinating story filled with amazing beings that you only read about in the pages of scripture, but there was also a lack of growth for me. These angels were left basically figure out everything themselves. A massive hurdle is placed in front of our main character, and yet there's almost no support that we see in most of the pages. Yeah, the draw to these stories is the same as book 1, but the follow-through felt weaker. Like we aren't given as much information as we should have been. I still enjoyed the ride, don't get me wrong, but some of this was so frustrating that I got pulled out of the story. Yeah. I'm just going to leave that where it is. Okay, ready? Because this is the last one I've got, and it's a doozy, and it's a bit longer because, oh my goodness, I had problems with this book. And it is called Sparrow in the Defier series, book 2 by Mandy Fender. I gave it 2 stars, and I read it 3.5 years after the first one, which was Defier, Girl Who Stood. 3.5 year gap because of the first book's problems. I left it a very long time. I wasn't even sure if I was going to continue the series, but I did. There's one more book too, and I have it, you know, because of course I do. Oh my, this book had problems. Here we go. You ready? Get the popcorn. Just crack my knuckles. Get the popcorn because here we go. Here's the review. How do I say all the things I want to? I'm just going to info dump it all in this review, I suppose. I still maintain that this story had so much potential, which was something I said about the first book. It was a while since I'd read the first one, so it took me a while to remember everyone, but once I did, oh boy. I like the character of Lennox. Her journey at the Sparrow compound learning everything would have easily fit into the first book. I don't know what exactly our third book climax is leading towards, except for one very obvious plot point, which I won't spoil. Our villain didn't feel deserved. I don't understand how this guy is the big bad at all. He's basically a bully with money. How is that a superior villain? It's not. The writing, I finally realized, is a big problem for me. There are very well-written sequences, particularly within the action that goes on. But most of this book reads like it was written by an absolute novice writer. Phrases that are amateur at best are littered throughout this book. I'm so sorry, Mandy. I've great writers and not so great, and I'm sad to say this falls in the category of writing that just isn't good. It needed severe work before it was published, in my opinion. It's not even writing style that I'm objecting to. It just reads like a first draft, which is not what you want. There were parts where all of a sudden talk very seriously about God that was so out of place, I didn't know what to do with them. It wasn't weaved in nicely. It was slammed in the middle of the scene and shoved down your throat. Like I said in my review of the first book, I love Christian fiction, but this wasn't hitting over the line for me. The general plot of the second book was pretty interesting, but it was wrapped up in so much poor writing, cliched lines that it was almost impossible to keep track of the thread that kept me engaged. I'm so disappointed in these comments because, again, it had so much potential, capital letters, very important to know, to be an amazing story. So much. It just didn't make it through the pages. If he could, sorry. If this had gone through maybe another 4 or 5 draft passes, heavy content editing and revisions, hello neighbors, it could have been great. It just wasn't. It just wasn't. I'm so disappointed in that. It really did have good potential. Anywho, those are the books that I read really, really far after the first ones, and, you know, mixed reviews, mixed results. Yeah. Some of those series I have to finish. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you in the adventures.